Hey friends, so today we're going to talk about modifiers. Now, if you've been billing Medicare for any amount of time, you're probably already familiar with your AT or your GA. The first one that I'm going to cover, and it is my absolute least favorite modifier, is a GZ. Now, what is a GZ? You're familiar with a GA, right? The GA is where you have that signed ABN on file that lets Medicare know, hey, we know that this is maintenance. We've informed the patient that it's maintenance. They understand that that is not a covered service and that they know that they're going to have to pay for it. But what is a GZ, you ask? Like I said, it's my least favorite one. It's when you have to let Medicare know that you did not get that signed ABN on file. You perform the service. Maybe after the fact, you're like, oh no, that was supposed to be a maintenance visit and we didn't have them sign the ABN. A GZ lets Medicare know, hey, we didn't do that. We didn't inform the patient in advance. Now, because an adjustment is a covered service, you have to let them know in advance. That's the whole point of the ABN process. So unfortunately, if you don't have that patient's consent, you don't have that, you didn't give them that advance notice that they're supposed to have prior to performing the service, you put the GZ modifier on the claim, and then Medicare is going to see that, and they're going to actually ask you to write it off. Because again, we didn't do our due diligence to inform the patient in advance, hey, this is considered maintenance care, and you're required to pay for that because Medicare doesn't cover it. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is a GY. A GY just stands for, hey, this is a statutorily excluded service. And while you're not required by law to submit a claim for every statutorily excluded service that you do in your office, a lot of times patients really need that, and it helps them understand that Medicare doesn't pay for it. So you might be asking, what is a statutorily excluded service? That basically just means by statute, they don't cover it. So this is going to be your exams, your x-rays, your therapies, basically anything but a chiropractic adjustment. So if it's not a 98940, a 98941, or a 98942, Medicare doesn't cover. Let's say your patient comes in and they get a spinal adjustment along with, say, a shoulder adjustment. So there's your extremity code, a 98943. Normally, I'll go ahead and bill that with my adjustment code so that when the patient gets that EOB and they see, hey, maybe Medicare covered the 80% of the adjustment, but the extremity was not covered, it helps substantiate, the fact that I've already told the patient, hey, they don't cover this. So your GY modifier lets Medicare know, hey, I'm aware that this is statutorily excluded, and I'm aware that you're not going to pay for it. The other beauty of having that GY modifier is in situations where maybe Medicare doesn't cover it, but maybe they have a secondary that does. So for an example, let's say I have a supplemental plan that might pay on some x-rays. Well, if I submit to Medicare, and I have to submit to Medicare first, right? Because they're the primary. And I have to get a denial from the primary before my secondary will consider the claim. So this is where the GY comes into play. I'll submit that claim to Medicare. I'll put the GY modifier on those services that are statutorily excluded, get the official denial, and it will forward the claim to the secondary, or I can submit the claim to the secondary. And again, the GY just lets Medicare know, hey, I know this isn't covered. You know this isn't covered. It'll actually trigger an automatic denial, which keeps your claims processing, it goes quicker. So that's the beauty of that modifier. And then we have our GP modifier. So GP, this is for when you are performing, say, a therapy. I will throw the GP on there to let Medicare know, hey, I understand that this is a therapy in nature type service. And then we have LT for left and RT for right. And again, this is important when you have, bilateral issues. So let's say we take an x-ray of the left knee and we also need an x-ray of the right knee. Again, this isn't going to matter a whole lot to Medicare because they don't cover that service. But when there's a secondary payer involved, you're going to want to be able to let them know, hey, we did in fact do two separately identifiable services. Because sometimes if you just send two of the same knee x-ray code, they might actually deny that second one as a duplicate claim because your dates of service are going to be the same. And they're not going to understand, why did you send me two of the same code? So when you have one that has the LT for the left side and one that has the RT for the right side, you're setting yourself up for having a better chance of getting that paid through the secondary if they cover that service, because they can understand what you did. I hope all this information about modifiers has been helpful today. If you need more help, if Medicare is just really confusing you, reach out at confidentchiro.com.